Hello everyone, welcome to the Concern Podcast, where we unpack political, social, economic and cultural stories shaping our world. I am Emmanuel Taban. Now, the government of the Republic of South Sudan has rejected calls by the African Union, the United Nations, the IGAD, and some East African community members and African member states for the immediate and unconditional release of first Vice President Riek Machar from detention. Very interesting one there. Now, in this video, we are going to specifically look at that. But before we continue, if this is your first time watching a video on this channel, please subscribe, hit on the notification button, like, comment, and if the videos interest you, share with your colleagues. This is a side where if you're passionate about politics and other social issues and economic issues about South Sudan, this is a side where you need to hang on and rely on reliable and updated and daily news about South Sudan. For those who have been supporting us, thank you so much. Continue doing so. We are much grateful. Now, we all know that on the sidelines of the recently concluded African Union Heads of State or Heads of State Summit that was held in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, there was a meeting of a high-level committee on South Sudan that was headed by the South African president. And that meeting in attendance were African Union and the United Nations, IGAD, some East African member states like Rwanda, Kenya, and some African states like Nigeria. And it was during that meeting that so many recommendations were made for the government of South Sudan. Of course, in that meeting was also the President of the Republic of South Sudan and the delegation that accompanied him for the Addis Ababa summit. And in that meeting, there were so many recommendations that were made. And some of these recommendations include like the government of South Sudan funding the Electoral Commission, the Constitutional Review Commission, and the Political Parties Council so that the country gets prepared for the forthcoming elections that is scheduled. They also recommend for a full de-escalation of the conflict that is happening right now in South Sudan, and so many other recommendations that were made. And these calls and one of the recommendations also includes the calls for unconditional release of political detainees or political prisoners, including the first Vice President, Dr. Riek Machar. And therefore, when the government received this recommendation on Thursday last week, the government spokesperson, who also doubles as the Minister of Information, Communication, Technology and Postal Services, that is Atena Wegatin, gave out the position of the government on all those recommendations that were made by African Union. And interestingly, the government spokesperson, Atena Wegatin, who I believe speaks the position of the government, said that the government welcomes all the recommendations made by the African Union and those states, member states that attended the meeting, including Nigeria, which include de-escalation of the conflict and funding or giving extra funding to the Electoral Commission, to the Political Parties Council and the Constitutional Review Committee, and preparing the country towards the forthcoming election. But regarding the calls for immediate and unconditional release of first Vice President Machar, Honorable Atena Wek said that that is not going to be acceptable because, one, the issue is not on the hands of the government of the Republic of South Sudan. It is not in the hands of it could be under the government of South Sudan, but it's not in the hands of politicians. And therefore, the President of the Republic of South Sudan or any politician in South Sudan has no powers to release first Vice President Riek Machar unconditionally, simply because the issue is now in the courts. It is a judicial matter that needs to be respected, and that its verdict or its decision need to be decided by the judiciary of the country, and that's not merely a political issue. He, however, thanked all those member states and African Union and the United Nations for all the calls and to end the long conflict that is in South Sudan. However, the government rejected the calls for the release of first Vice President Machar, saying it is unconstitutional and it is unfair, and it is not the position of the government or position of any, it is not in the position of any or powers of any politicians to release first Vice President Machar, simply because the issue is now in the courts, and it is the courts to determine the issue of Machar. That is the government position, of course, given through the government spokesperson, Atena Wekaten. Now, I made a video recently regarding posing a question of whether Machar should be released. And one of the reasons as why I believe Machar shouldn't be released is, I feel, the same reason as to why the government is saying. And just like today I would say, just like last time I said, today I will still say that. Me saying that first Vice President Machar shouldn't be released just by the government and freely or unconditionally does not mean that I have personal issues with Machar or I hate him. No. It is that I respect or I understand the importance of a very young country like South Sudan having a foundation built on the judiciary of a country. It is important that when an issue happens like this, it should be handled by the institution that actually that serves that matter, like the judiciary. And therefore, if we have politicians and leaders in the country trying to interfere with judicial issues, then we are trying to create a precedent where in future cases like this will be interfered with, and that this is not a very good practice when it starts right now. And that I know, I'm not saying Machar is totally guilty of all those charges that were made against him, but he has to prove himself free from all the charges that were made against him. And the only way he needs to prove himself, it is through the courts. It is through the established courts that is already prosecuting him right now. And the accused team has the defense team, that is the legal defense team, that is going to prove to the public and to the prosecution team that Machar and his team were not part of this incident, and therefore it will only be fair and better for a country like South Sudan to be left to deal with its matters regarding issues to do with just like the one of Machar. And therefore, I wouldn't expect that this issue brings in foreign countries or international organizations to actually get involved in, because this is an issue about South Sudan, and therefore South Sudan has its own institutions, and its institutions can equally carry out this responsibility of prosecuting Machar, and therefore it should only be the institutions of South Sudan to do this. The only thing that this African Union and the member states should have called for is for a very, very fast, they will call for this case to be done in a very fast manner, so that before the election start, the case of Machar should have been closed and done. That should have been the best thing that these international communities and international organizations should have done, but not about calling for immediate release of Machar. I feel that it is not fair. It's not totally okay to me. It is not. It looks like interfering in a country's issues. So the best thing they would have done is to call for the judiciary in South Sudan and the government of South Sudan to facilitate for the very fast prosecution of Machar, so that this issue is done before the elections. Because we also know the danger of it, the danger of this issue still being carried on even when the elections is being done. It is very bad. And if we find that Machar is excluded from participating or being part of the election simply because he's still being prosecuted, I know this is very dangerous. So I hold the position of the government that Machar shouldn't be released unconditionally, but I'll only encourage the government of South Sudan to facilitate the prosecution of Machar so that this case is done before elections. This is the only thing that I will call for. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. Write down in the comment section what do you think about this move by the government of the Republic of South Sudan to reject for the calls of the first Vice President Riek Machar to be released unconditionally. And these calls were made by some of the East African member states and African member state and Africa Union, IGAD, and the United Nations. Write down in the comment section what you think about this. Otherwise, until next time, I'm Emmanuel Taban, and this is the Concern Podcast. Before we close today's episode, here's a quick message from our sponsor, Wanit.co. If you've been planning to build a website, but the cost has been holding you back, Wanit.co makes it affordable and stress-free this time around. Whether you are an individual, a non-profit organization, or a business, Wanit.co designs professional websites starting from as cheap as $250. Individuals can actually launch with a starter website of up to 7 pages and a free email, or choose an advanced option with unlimited pages, a professional portfolio, and branding support. For non-profit organizations, they can select flexible packages from basic websites to premium solutions with e-commerce features and ongoing support. And for business companies, Wanit.co delivers company-ready website with hosting, staff training, and multilingual options and online stores. And the best part of it is actually that you can build your dream website within your budget. Wanit.co is an affordable, accessible, and professional partner. And to get started, you can actually visit Wanit.co or email them at info@wanit.co, or you can get in touch with them through their WhatsApp number at +12265043322. Wanit.co, proudly affiliated with Jobs to Apply. And if you're wondering of what I'm talking about, here are some samples of website created by Wanit.co. You can see them right here.